Through all the social links in Persona 4, and even across the Persona games in general, I'd say it's pretty easy to argue that none are more unique than the Hermit Arcana of Persona 4, often referred to as the Fox social link, and that's mainly due to its gameplay loop. Rather than the typical hangout and chat upgrade of links with a single character or party member, or auto-upgrade links with story events, the Hermit of Persona 4 is actually a series of tangentially related specific side quests that you manually do as mostly non-time-passing events over the course of Persona 4. Truth be told, it wasn't until my 4th playthrough of Persona 4 personally, 3rd of Golden, before I finally sat down and committed to doing the whole link properly. You see, the purpose of the Fox, and the incentive of doing so, lowers the price of SP healing in dungeons, something that, if you're trying to do in one day, can sometimes be challenging without the proper items. But getting those proper items isn't actually that hard if you know what you're doing, which I think demotivates a lot of people from truly devoting themselves to doing this link, which I also covered in its own segment. Aside from that, what is the purpose of this link? And I really think for Persona 4, it actually does quite a bit to pull together different themes and ideas in a very seamless way, as well as integrate more interesting quests into the side story, as most other quests are just farming for specific weapons or traded materials. The first couple links are simple enough. Give an old man medicine so he can care for the shrine, helping a girl with their love life, helping someone with their overeating, or getting their dog to come back home. A lot of these ranks are seemingly random, just helping them with the wishes that they placed on the Innas at the shrine, in order to, by proxy, help the Fox's notoriety as a helpful spirit go up. The central purpose for a lot of these links, other than offering a gameplay mix-up from the normal links, in a meta sense, is to contribute to the idea of the living world of Inaba. Persona 4's living world is one of its best aspects, with moving parts and exact people being trackable through arcs, more so than in 3, where not much changed with most of the nameless NPCs, and not much in Persona 5, where things were so large-scale that it often lacked the intimacy of knowing each resident. That's not a criticism or problem with those other games, it's not a better or worse type of thing, but it is a good thing for Persona 4 to be strong at, since the small town, rumors spread fast, everybody knows everybody vibe is a big part of the setting of this game in a small town. There are a few links that go above and beyond though, and I want to cover those ones in a lot more detail. Rank 5 to 6 is, in my eyes, the first real link, as it's more serious than just wanting friends or having a crush recognize you. More than generalized fears of losing, not that those issues are small by any regard, but the man we meet in this link is depressed, and feels that the last bit of meaning has left his life. How he used to love making model figures, but running this shop with hard times over the years, he's lost the joy, the meaning of his life that kept him going on, struggling financially to keep the store open, and partially through that, associating his struggle with his passion. Building the model he gives you reinvigorates him, and the link is over, but the character actually isn't. From there on, at nighttime, unrelated to the Hermit, you can actually go to his store and receive either a robot or a scooter model, and collect up to 12 combined. When you make all of them, you can go and visit him, and he tells you that he has no more to give. He had a few spares, but he decided to share them with the children and other big model fans in the area, and aside from the few that he's keeping to himself, that's all he got. It's kind of hard to describe, but I never saw a picture or anyone post about this dialogue. Model making is barely mentioned in Persona 4. It's very possible a player could go the entire game without knowing it was anything other than a tiny little part of one social link. Heck, if they didn't do that social link, they may go the entire game wondering why their shelves stayed bare. Because while it is another avenue of upping stats, it's not necessarily crucial or important, and in fact, there's not any reason to really even play the game and get all of the models unless you really want to, unless you enjoy seeing what the game has to show. But even then, in modern days, you can just watch a video like this that I've put up and see what they all look like, as I've recorded in 1080p. Weird to say, but I felt a connection to this guy, even though he remains nameless as a hobby shop owner in the struggling shopping district of Inaba. Even though I made one gunpla one time and didn't even like it that much in real life. I'm not a model nut. To him, though, he tells you, again, that you made him realize that models give his life meaning. And why else but that he enjoys them and that they mean something to him. They bring up his mood, and they make him happy. He says he's closing up shop, but he realizes even if he does, even if the store fails, even if he decides to close, that's no reason for him to cut modeling out of his personal life. His last line is, "You're my final customer. Thank you." What am I, except for a person wholly dedicated to the things that I enjoy? What have I been doing all of this time writing this? This being one of the last handful of scripts in terms of my order. This has been 3 months, including the footage gathering process. All for what? The possibility of it not getting any attention. All for posting on a channel that isn't monetized as I write, and now that I'm actually recording the audio, still isn't monetized as I'm recording the audio. How many more patrons will I get, really, from poring over reading chunks of the Nihon Shoki or Kojiki, sputtering about for hours on end with my limited Japanese on the internet, trying to find personal Japanese blogs for nuggets of information the West maybe missed or failed to ascertain through translation at all? How many more patrons or donations have really come through in these hundreds of hours working on this giant project over the last few months? Maybe I'm silly and it's a lot. These videos haven't come out yet, and, you can always be positive, but I'm writing this before the first video comes out, and I hope one thing connects more than anything. I have passion. I'm hungry for knowledge. The media, this language, this culture, it's interesting to me, and because it is, I value it, and no one can take that from me. It's the sort of interesting thing that makes me want to get out of bed and write what is, at the time that I wrote this script, 130,000 words for this total project. And now recording the audio, I know the word count is even higher. Working, learning, growing, it gives me energy to stay alive. So whether it's model figures or video games, whether it's a foreign language or culture, whether it's something that seems unbelievably instrumental to society, or something meant for entertainment, the things that we give value to in life are valid and worth the value given, solely because they bring joy to us. The things that make you willing to walk another day on Earth are never to be undervalued. And maybe it seems weird, but that's what I get from the middle-aged man running the failing model shop. But deciding once the shop closes to continue with things that motivated him to want to open it, and imagine the programmers, the modelers, the people on the MetaSense who worked on Persona 4 Golden too, imagine them making these models when Persona 4 Golden came out. This didn't need to be in the game, but somebody thought it would be nice. Somebody thought, wouldn't that just add a little bit more freedom and liveliness to the sim aspect of this world? And they added it. To this day, with few people knowing or experiencing that you can get all of the models over a dozen in this game. I just wish that I knew more accurately where the robots came from, since I can't seem to find an origin or any discussion around the source really, since this is such an underthought and talked about character and part of the game. I feel like I'm drawing a major blank on these models, so I'll leave that to you. Please tell me if you recognize them. Same with the license plates on the scooters. Originally, I thought that they might be references to dates in the game, but many of the dates shown don't cover particular story events, so my warm little unfounded theory is that those are like the birth dates of the people who worked on this unnoticed tiny aspect of the game. Maybe I can get big enough base of people behind me and find it out someday for myself. Maybe even ask them in Japanese if I continue learning with my passion. There's a few more similarly small social links after this man here, but the other significant quest, if in similar theming, is the Old Man and the Guardians. He similarly mentions his regrets never being able to catch those great fish, but the more that you talk, you learn about his deceased wife, and how he wonders if he's lost his own meaning in life. When you show him both great guardians, his first thought is that maybe he can die happy now, pass on to the other side, see his wife, and not be ashamed or regretful, seeing the fish in some way, even if it wasn't him who did it. Which would be sad, but kind of heartwarming. Instead, it's much more motivational. He kicks that death-welcoming mindset to the side and decides to jump wholeheartedly back into fishing, what he loves. Similar to the model man, whether it's a culture or language, a hobby, a sport, an exercise, a game, a view, an accomplishment, a family, a friend, we are subjects that decide what brings our life's purpose. As our own subject, we are the number one priority in that decision. Once you finish all the Hermit anthology quests, the shrine is so successful with the gratitude of the people who've had their innas answered at the shrine that it gets a huge overhaul and the fox is overjoyed. So looking at the Arcana, what can we draw from the Hermit and what it means in regard to not just the fox, but the experiences we have here and the messaging of the Hermit as a whole? Well, a few things I found are here. The Hermit represents the fool's journey. After gathering the experiences of the world, he circles back to the mountaintop and holds out his light to guide the way so the others find their way to the mountain as well. I think this makes sense, as the Fool is the player's arcana, working through the experiences of each of the residents of Inaba, helping them on their way so they can return to the mountain. In this case, the shrine, after solving the problems and having their experiences. It's basically a one-for-one mimic of the idea of the Hermit in that regard. The Hermit is drawn alone in the card, traditionally. In fact, what we consider a hermit is someone who lives alone. But they're never actually alone. With half of their body turned to face toward the divine accompanies them along their duties. In this case, the Inarikami, or the fox god that we find at the shrine, gives us our directive and guides our actions to help others, to act as the path shower for the people lost and troubled. In upper polarity, the card deals with spiritual union, the presence of the light and an inner spiritual force, a divine teacher. In the lower polarity, it represents true isolation. Rather than a spiritual solitude, it is loneliness and the inability to solve one's own issues or guide the paths of others. So I feel, in a very literal sense, the Hermit is represented here. The god, the divine we convene with here is the fox of the shrine. Fox shrines are very common in Japan and are generally associated with well-being of general affairs, business, personal relationship. I already covered the real-life Inaba shrine in my Yukiko video, so please check that part out if you haven't. And if it isn't out yet, please subscribe. It will be eventually. So that's the Hermit, a link that I've come to appreciate a lot, in the very least conceptually, for its unique role in the game, despite me ignoring it on most of my initial runs entirely. While a 100% run can be a little scary with this link, it's really nice mix-up gameplay-wise, represents its arcana well, and follows through on the game's setting and themes. If you want to see more, again, I ask that you like and comment your thoughts. Please help support me on Patreon or on Twitch through PayPal if at all you can. Patrons get day one scripts and behind-the-scenes materials, as well as a group call private-ish conversation on Discord at the start of the month. And I'll see you soon.